The Todoroki family has been shown to produce some of the most powerful characters in My Hero Academia, all thanks to Endeavor and his insane genetics as well as his Quirk marriage. That said, I figured it would probably be really fun to watch Izuku live life on recruit difficulty and be born with a powerful quirk instead of a quirkless loser. That said though, if you guys go on to enjoy today's video, then slap a like on this video seeing as it only takes 1 second, and if you don't, I will push your grandma down the stairs. That said, enjoy. We jump straight into the story on the day that Izuku Todoroki is born alongside his brother, Shoto Todoroki. Now in this story, they're actually going to be twins, and there's a very specific reason for that. There's a little dynamic that I want to go with for this specific story, and I'm not really sure if this video is going to get a part 2. It's only determined really on how you guys receive the video. So if you guys love this story, then go down below in the comments, report your attendance as I'm going to be taking that, and leave a like on the video since it's the best way to let me know. But without me wasting more of your guys' time, let's get started. When Izuku Todoroki grows up, his life is going to be a little bit different because this time around he is going to activate a quirk. However, this time around it's going to be kind of bittersweet because the day that he activates his quirk, he would actually end up activating a fire quirk. Now, why is that the case? Like, Izuku isn't sure, but his flames are white and for some reason they don't burn anything. Izuku was so confused by that. He literally activated a quirk and it activated by accident where he ended up shooting flames at a kid, but it didn't burn him. So they took him to a quirk doctor and Izuku ended up being told that he has a flame quirk, but it's interesting, it's mutated, it's never been seen before. His flames don't burn, or at least they don't yet. And Izuku would wonder why in the world that's the case. But Endeavor would pretty much just say that he's a failed child, and so he would put all of his hopes into Todoroki. This, however, would end up being a choice that would perfectly go according to Endeavor's plans, and with this, Todoroki would actually end up awakening as half hot, half cold quirk that we get in the original. Because of this, Todoroki would then immediately start getting trained to become a pro hero, and Izuku would always want his father to train him. Izuku knows that his father isn't exactly the nicest person in the world, but he loves his father either way and he admires him for being a hero. He had always thought the day he activated a quirk he would be trained, but when it happened he was shunned aside for Todoroki. And his whole childhood he would wonder why he was always looked down upon by his father, why he always stood in Todoroki's shadow. Izuku would have no choice but to train on his own, and the benefits that he would get from that would be so minimal it would be borderline unbelievable. But Todoroki would grow stronger day by day and Izuku could just feel himself being weak. He knows that he's not going to become a pro hero at this rate and he's just not sure what to do. I mean, what can he do, right? So as Todoroki would grow up training alongside Endeavor, hating every second of it and resenting his father, Izuku would watch all this from the side and hate Todoroki for that. Todoroki gets to live the life that Izuku wants, and Todoroki isn't even grateful for it. He gets to be trained by the #2 hero in the world. He should be thanking Endeavor, groveling at his feet, Izuku would think. He's unsure why he hates it. Sure, he's treated like a soldier, but at least he gets to talk to his father. And that's all Izuku wanted. He wanted the recognition of his dad. Eventually his mom was taken to a psychiatric ward where she was stated in for being crazy or something, and Izuku lost everything. Now all he had was his siblings, and they sort of didn't really have any cool common ground with Izuku. They thought that he was weird. Why does he still like Endeavor? Izuku also wasn't too aware of the Toya situation, so he was never really told why they all hate him as much as they do. And because of this, eventually years would pass until eventually both of them would be about 12 years old. It would be on this particular day that Izuku would get home from school and he would have found something out. He can now finally increase the heat of his flames, and now they can actually burn things. And now Izuku was getting extremely happy because of that, because his flames were actually doing something. They're not just useless anymore. Sure, it might take a while to burn things, but Izuku could keep working on it. Meanwhile, Todoroki was over there refusing to use his flames and only using his ice, spiting Endeavor every single chance that he could get, and Izuku was getting tired of it. One day, Todoroki would actually have ended up walking by Izuku, and he would end up saying what's up to him, hi, but Izuku would just ignore him, and it'd be in this moment that Todoroki would grab Deku by his arm and say, "Hey, what's the matter? Why don't you talk to me?" And Izuku would look at him with hatred in his eyes, saying, "Why don't I talk to you? Maybe it's because you're living the life that I deserve. You have everything. You were able to train with our father. You have the perfect quirk. Meanwhile, I got stuck with this crappy quirk. I have to train by myself and Endeavor won't even look at me. You mean to tell me you don't like me because I get to train with that monster? Shut up, Izuku would say. You don't get to talk about him like that. The only reason you think he's a monster is because you're a weakling who can't handle the training. You're soft, Todoroki. If I had your chance, if I had your opportunity, I would revel in it. I would grow so unbelievably powerful, and I would take everything Endeavor takes me to heart. You, on the other hand, you're scum, Todoroki. You're nothing but a pathetic weakling, and I promise that someday I'll make sure that my quirk is powerful enough to defeat even you, Mr. Perfect. As he walks off, and Todoroki would just be sitting there looking at the back of Izuku as he can just feel like Endeavor energy like emanating off of Izuku. It would be at this point that we were going to be getting a 2-year time skip in which during this time Izuku would have done a lot of training, and I mean a lot of training. Izuku would have gotten so unbelievably powerful, not because he like trained like all hard. He was sort of harnessing his inner Sasuke, like using the power of hatred and like, I need to be better than my brother to get stronger every day. He like hated the feeling of being in his brother's shadow and everything he did being overlooked by his brother. His brother has straight A's. Izuku was in very smart in school in this timeline. He had to work for it. He had to work for his quirk. He's not as tall as his brother. Heck, he's not even as good looking as him. So Izuku has to work for everything that he has, and he's tired of it. Not one thing has gone according to plan. Izuku has had to work as hard as Mirio had to get his quirk to even the point where it's at this moment, you know? And Izuku takes a lot of pride in that. So eventually we would find ourselves on the day of the UA sports festival, on the UA entrance exam, and it would be on this particular day that Izuku would have been told that he could just get in by recommendations. Psych, no he wouldn't, because his father doesn't care about him. So Izuku's not going to be going in through recommendations. I'm literally so dumb. He's going to actually be having to take the test like a normal person. And Todoroki, like even when they were getting close to this day, Todoroki would tell Izuku that if he wants, he could like put him in for recommendation, tell Endeavor something. But Izuku's like, nah, I don't need handouts from you. As like he would make his way towards the UA entrance exam area, and it would be there that Izuku would pass the test, getting a better score than Todoroki would for the written exam, since obviously they have to take it too. And then when it comes to the physical portion of the exam, the robot portion, Izuku would absolutely obliterate those robots as if they were Todoroki himself. He was going ham. Using his flame quirk, using the white flames, he would grab onto the poles that were there and slingshot himself toward where all the robots are at. Immediately upon landing, Izuku would like spin in the air, and with flames he would slam them on the ground, literally scorching everything. Like, I don't know, I know that most of us, since we watch anime, like fire does nothing. Like, especially in Naruto, like if you get hit with a fire attack, you kind of just get like a little scratch on you, right? It's almost like scraping your knee. That's what fire does in anime. But this, let me paint the scene for you. Have you guys ever seen Suicide Squad? That scene where like that one guy with the fire abilities like goes crazy in the yard and like everyone just gets turned into bones? Yeah, that's what happens. Izuku lands and like even the building surrounding him would literally get scorched from how hot it is. And it would be absolutely insane. Even the people watching this would be like, what the heck? Endeavor, who would be watching as well, would be like, what is happening? Like, when did he get that strong? But it'd be in this moment that Izuku would create like flame wings and literally begin flying toward the next robot, as he would literally get there, create a fire fist, like a flaming fall of like fists, and just like crush that robot, leaving nothing but a scorch mark on the ground. Like it might as well have been hit by lava, bro. Like it's absolutely insane how hot Izuku's flames are. And he would just go in there and destroy. That was the only thing that was on Izuku's mind. He would go in there and get robot point after robot point, and eventually a rumbling would be heard as Izuku would stare up at the 0 pointer, and he would notice that there was a girl like about to be crushed. Izuku in this moment was about to like destroy this like robot, just like to like finally put that nail in the coffin and show his father, since he had never shown him how strong he really was. Like, I'm stronger than Todoroki, right? Like this was the day he was gonna unveil all of his hard work. He would create gigantic wings and fly off as he would go charging in at the robot, and he would have like a sort of kaiju like aura of flames like surrounding his body, almost like a Susanoo, going in to destroy it and like creating massive damage. But it would be in this moment that Izuku would hear a scream for help, and it would be almost as if Izuku just couldn't bring himself to ignore her. For some reason, instead of taking the opportunity to show up Todoroki and like show just how powerful he was, Izuku literally couldn't hold on to the transformation because like he knew in the back of his head, if he does this, she's gonna get badly hurt. So Izuku would like literally mid-air evade the Zero Pointer's punch because it would try to like hit him, and then Izuku would fly towards the direction of Uraraka. As he would shoot like flames at Uraraka, she would cover herself thinking she's about to get burned, but it wouldn't burn her, and she would be grabbed, brought to safety, and taken to Recovery Girl, as the exam would actually end up ending right there, and Izuku would look at the Zero Pointer thinking to himself, I'll get it next time. As Uraraka would thank him, and Izuku like in a monotone voice would just be like, yeah, whatever, as he walks off, and he would make his way towards the Todoroki household, where once he would end up arriving there, Endeavor would actually end up going over to Izuku, and he would end up asking him when in the world he got that strong, as Izuku would look at him and say, no thanks to you, you good for nothing deadbeat, as he would go to his room and slam the door. And Endeavor would be like, I'm talking to you, as he would break open the door. But Izuku would literally just create another one out of flames, and Endeavor would be standing outside of the door, just like, I'll talk to that rebellious kid later, now I have two on my hands. And Izuku in this moment would have his headphones in, like listening to like some rock music or something like that, just some like average anime scene, right, where he's like trying to be alone. And eventually we would get a time skip to the first day of the UA schooling system, where Izuku would wake up and he would end up getting in on the train as he would make his way to school. Once he would arrive, he would end up being greeted to the side of a blue-haired boy and a blonde-haired boy, obviously Ida and Bakugo. They're both arguing back and forth, just going at it for literally no reason at all. And Izuku just ignores them, goes to the back of the class, puts his headphones in, and would like be in his own like zone. And you'll be left in the dust, like just like imagine how like Miles Morales would do it. You're the sunflower, like stuff like that. You know what I mean? And that's exactly what Izuku would do. He would just be zoned out in his own world until suddenly Aizawa would end up saying, kid, put those away, until eventually he pays attention. They go outside, they take the Quirk apprehension test, and there it would be Izuku's mission. Like bro would be on a straight up mission to beat Todoroki, make sure that Todoroki doesn't stand a single chance. And while Todoroki would be trying pretty hard, Izuku would be try-harding. Like he would be going extremely hard on every single thing that he could do. Anything that could give him even the slightest advantage over Todoroki, he would take. And Todoroki would notice this, as eventually Izuku would end up being in first place, beating Momo by actually a landslide, and Todoroki by even a larger landslide. And because of this, there's also one more change that comes out of this. Number one, Bakugo isn't over there like trying to bully like alpha male Deku in this moment. He's not like, Deku, how'd you get your quirk, or nothing like that. And Deku just is like at the first place. Aizawa tells everybody they're free to go home, and Todoroki goes over to him like trying to congratulate him, but Izuku's not having any of it. He looks at Todoroki with a cocky smile and says, guess you're not as perfect as dad thinks, as he would walk off, make his way home, and eventually the next day of school would come around, where this time around Shoto would be like, dude, all I've tried to do is like talk to you, but you hate me for no reason. Like, it's not my fault that I was born with this quirk. It's not my fault that dad like freaking chose to absolutely go crazy training me and not you. Like, I didn't do that. You want to talk to somebody or be mad at someone? Be mad at my father. And it would be in this moment that Todoroki would realize, like, Endeavor, like, now he hates him even more than he would in the original, because now his own brother literally hates him. His twin hates him because of his father. Now he doesn't have his mother because of his father. He didn't have a childhood because of his father. He was brutally beaten every day and trained to the bone every single day because of his father. He lost basically all of his childhood because of his father, Endeavor. And it would be kicking in this moment, and Todoroki would be having none of it. He is not having a good day at all, and it shows. After this, we eventually get a scene of Izuku making his way home, but once he gets home, Endeavor tries to talk to him, and I could definitely see something like this happening, where Izuku, because he was doing this, he just wasn't having it. He wasn't trying to talk to Endeavor, and he just walked right past him as Endeavor would look at him being like, hey, talk to me when I'm talking, like don't ignore me when I'm talking to you. But Izuku would give him like this death stare, and flames would like go off of him, like white flames would just begin bursting off of him as he says, let me go, old man. And it'd be in this moment that Endeavor would like fire up his own flame, saying, what you gonna do about it? But in this moment, Izuku would calm his flames down, saying, nothing yet, as he would walk off and make his way towards like a music store, because let's say Izuku really likes music. That's like the whole theme of the story so far. Once he makes his way there, he would end up bumping into a girl named Jiro. And no, this isn't gonna be a ship, for all of you guys wondering if I'm gonna do some stuff like that. No, it's just gonna be a friend, okay? An actual friend. Izuku's allowed to have those, okay? He bumps into her and he sees like, oh, like she likes music too, like that's crazy. So they actually end up talking. They're like, yo, you were in UA? She's like, yeah, like I'm in UA. Izuku has a nice conversation with her. Like she like her and him are talking, and mind you, they don't like feel any attraction towards one another because they're not each other's types. But Izuku eventually, after everything, would end up asking Jiro if she plays anything, and him and her would literally begin jamming out. She'd be on the guitar and Izuku would be on the drums, and like Jiro would be singing and Izuku would be vibing like, yo, we gotta record something sometime, you know? So Jiro's like, oh, I'm down, you know? And eventually after this, we would have the next day at UA where Jiro is sort of going to be replacing Uraraka's role here, where instead of Uraraka being like, oh, Izuku, because like Izuku's more closed off, they don't have any like common interests, Jiro's going to be filling in that role, except her personality makes it a little different because of that, you know what I mean? With that, what's going to basically end up happening is the class would resume, right? The very next day, they would have normal studies until finally it would be like the final period of the day. And it'd be in this moment that All Might would just burst through the door, just like, I am here, as he makes his presence very known. And eventually the class would end up being told about the heroes versus villains event. It would be here that All Might would end up telling everybody to get suited up, because as he's always been told, the clothes make the pros. In this moment, everybody would just begin suiting up and they'd all be having a great old time. And it'd be at this specific moment that Izuku would make his way outside and his hero costume would be put on. And let's just say that Izuku's hero costume is cool, all right? I don't feel like making it up in my head. It's just something simple, something sleek. It looks really cool. Think like Todoroki's a costume that he gets like upgraded, but like cooler, I guess, or something, like, I don't know, but just something cool, all right? And then he sees Todoroki's costume and he just like straight breaks out laughing. He's like, what is that? And like Todoroki looks at him and Todoroki just kind of like glares at him. And then it would be in this moment that both of them would end up basically going to the front of the classroom, where it would be in this moment that Todoroki would actually be told that he's going to be teamed up with Izuku. In this moment, Todoroki and Izuku would like look at each other and be like, teamed up. And I know what you guys were probably thinking. I know most of y'all were probably like, oh, he's gonna make them fight, like, let's go. Nah, y'all gotta wait for that. Y'all gotta wait for part 2 if I even feel like giving it to you guys. Remember, hit the like button or I'm not dropping nothing. Like, that's all I'm saying. I'm literally not gonna drop it. Matter of fact, I'm just gonna straight private the video if it doesn't do good. But yeah, y'all want more? Prove it. Anyways, Izuku and Todoroki would like look at each other and they're like, okay, well, I guess we have to work together, Todoroki would be thinking. But Izuku's like, he's like, I'm not working with him. And it'd be in this moment that like Izuku would straight up go to All Might and be like, can I change my team? And All Might would be like, no. As Izuku just kind of has to deal with it. And his opponent would actually be Bakugo and Ida, right? Because of this, Izuku and Todoroki would actually be the villains. But I think what I want to have happen here, or do I want them to be the villains? Do I want them to be the heroes? Nah. Yeah, they're gonna be the villains. Okay, wait, yeah. So they're at the bomb room and they're both like looking at each other. Right now, they're having like a conversation with each other. Izuku's like giving Todoroki the glare, just like, like, don't talk to me, you know, like, we're working together for now, but this is the only time I'll ever work together with you. And Todoroki's like trying to get to him, like, why do you hate me? Why don't you hate Dad? And he's like, I do hate Dad, but you have the life that I always wanted, Mr. Perfect. You're always good at everything. And Todoroki's like, that's like how is that my fault? You know what I mean? But Izuku's like, it's not. It's not. Some people actually have to work for things. But it'd be in this moment that Bakugo would come busting in through the room and just like doom, 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 shooting explosions. As Todoroki would end up freezing Bakugo, and Izuku, like, seeing that Todoroki reacted faster than he did, because like Izuku was like not caring. He didn't even think that Bakugo was gonna be like that, like aggro at first. He would then like look at Todoroki and say, I could have done that too. And Todoroki's like, I know you could have. But Izuku took that as sarcasm, and so he would unfreeze Bakugo, literally using his flames to unfreeze him, and Bakugo would just be sitting there like dripping in sweat, considering that there was flames. Now Bakugo was like, had his full gauntlets full, and Bakugo held out his hands to like shoot the pin gauntlet explosion. It'd be in this moment that the explosion would go fired off, but Izuku would have straight literally created a dome of fire around himself, not Todoroki, to protect himself from that. And it would be in this moment that the bomb would actually get hit by the explosion, and it would literally like destroy the bomb. Like the paper mache bomb would be done for. Like, it is paper after all. Todoroki blocked himself with some ice, and as that would happen, All Might on the intercoms would go, hero team win, or the villains win, or wait, who would win? Because the bomb blew up. Technically it would blow up, so the villains win, right? Yeah. I think that stands to reason. Yeah, the villain team wins. As this happens, Izuku and Todoroki look at each other. They don't say anything, and then they make their way towards the room where like all the battle would like be like broke down. And it'd be in this moment that All Might would ask the classroom like, yo, who won and why did they win? And Momo would say, well, while the villains technically won, had this been a real situation, they also would have lost, considering that the bomb went off right next to them and they would have died. Judging by the fact that Bakugo didn't handle himself very heroic, if anything, he handled himself like a villain, he didn't get close to winning at all. So both teams really lost. And it'd be in this moment that Izuku would sort of realize that she's absolutely right. Like, had this not been a training exercise, that bomb would have blown up and like a bunch of people would have died. Like, he didn't act very heroic, and he would realize that his grudge against Todoroki definitely got in the way at the moment. As from there, Izuku would kind of like go home and like kicking a can almost, like he was frustrated, you know? But once he would make his way home, he would end up like just kind of like being like, I won't let that happen again. And then eventually what would end up going down is we would get the next arc, which is obviously the USJ arc, where everybody would be told that they're going to be going to the USJ. They're all given permission slips, and Izuku would then be given his thing. He would take it to Endeavor to sign it. But before Endeavor signs it, he would say, I need you to tell me when you got those flame abilities. And Izuku now is kind of forced to tell Endeavor like what happened, how he's been training, because he wants to become better than his brother, and he's going to become better than him, and his good-for-nothing father that treated him like garbage. He's proving them all wrong. Endeavor would hear that and would say, well, I hope you're successful. As from here, he would get the paper sign, and Endeavor would kind of chuckle, saying, looks like one of my kids actually ended up wanting to become powerful. But he would say, but that doesn't mean he will be stronger than Shoto, because he has ice, not just fire, you know? But Endeavor's never realized something. Izuku's flames don't burn him. Have you guys noticed that Izuku has absolutely zero drawbacks from his flames? Y'all remember how I said he could regulate the temperature? Yeah, his flames could literally just not be burning. And the reason that that's the case is because the flames that he emulates, like as he's shooting them off of him, the flames are at like nothing. They're not burning anything. But as they get like a safe distance from him, then they start burning. And that's how like the whole that's how he like conducts himself. Not only that, but Izuku has like a very high like tolerance to the flame, because he's like built it up himself with a little bit of minor scarring, not even like a tenth of as bad as Dabi's, but yeah, like he's just trained himself that hard, and he has that much finesse and control over his flames, you know? So that's why. And there's also going to be something else that Izuku's going to be working on, but I'll tell you that later. Regardless though, we now get into the events of the USJ. And it would be here that Kurogiri and the villains would make their presence known, just like they do in the original, and Izuku would end up getting teleported by Kurogiri to the boat section. Once there, Izuku looking at how there's a bunch of like monsters in the water with him, he would low-key freak out for a second, shooting flames at the monsters. And what Izuku would notice is that his flames are actually working in the water, which is just like shocking him completely. But it would be in this moment that he would be grabbed by Suyu and taken up on the boat, as Izuku would ask if any of their classmates are still in that water, and Tsuyu would say they're not, as it would be in this moment that Izuku shoots a flame so hot into the water that the water begins to boil, like all of it begins to boil, and the villains would like cry out in agony as they're like literally getting like boiled alive. Like they're not gonna die obviously, but like it hurts. And as soon as he sees like they've had enough, Izuku shoots a different flame into the water, which like regulates the temperature back to normal, not cold but normal. Like he can't make his flames cold, but he made it like so lukewarm that like it kind of like changed the temperature, you get what I mean? And it like overflowed the lake slightly, and now Izuku would create wings as he would fly out of there and make his way towards where the villain is at, thinking to himself that if he can handle this villain threat all by himself, he wonders what his father would think, seeing as he hates his dad but he still wants his approval and he still wants him to think that he's better than Todoroki. So now Izuku would be face to face with Shigaraki and the Nomu. All right, jumping back into the story, Deku is literally face to face with the Nomu, looking at the Nomu thinking to himself, if I can defeat this thing, if I can defeat these villains, then I can show father that he was wrong about Todoroki. I can be the strongest. And so immediately Izuku like fires up. He has like a flame aura literally bursting off of him as he looks towards the Nomu, and he sees that Aizawa is right there by the Nomu. Immediately Deku would straight shoot flames at the Nomu, and Aizawa would kind of like what's the word I'm looking for? He would kind of like bend down, like trying not to get burnt, considering that flames are literally shooting right at him. But the second that the flames make contact with him, nothing happens. In fact, it's like he literally just gets moved. Like he gets sent flying back a bit, but safely. I don't know how to explain it. Like he literally gets like sent flying, but he lands on flames that catch him, where it's kind of like clouds, you know what I mean? But with that, Deku then would rush at the direction of the Nomu, since he would have like trapped him in like a prison of flames, and the Nomu would like roar, like causing a loud like screech effect to go off as it like lets out like its own power, and like the flames would disperse everywhere. But Izuku would have like this like huge cocky smile on his face as he would blitz in at it, and he would shoot a flaming fist straight through the stomach of the Nomu as he would smirk, thinking to himself, checkmate. But suddenly the Nomu would straight punch him in the face, sending him flying back as it would like a couple of teeth would get knocked in, and Deku would be feeling that punch like really badly. And it wasn't even that strong considering that Aizawa was using his quirk nullification on it, but if not for that, it would have been straight raps for Deku. In that moment, Deku would land on the ground and realize that that thing is no joke. But not only that, Izuku is livid. Like he is beyond angry at this point, and he would rush back in at the Nomu as flames would be like shooting off of his face. And what Izuku wouldn't notice in this moment is that the flames are actually healing him, similar to what Marco's flames do in One Piece. And as Izuku's like flying in with these wings, Izuku in this moment would then like just literally straight in a radius of like 5 feet would just boom, like let out flames that are so unbelievably hot that they would actually turn blue, just like Dabi's hot, just like Dabi's flames, right? And like the Nomu would begin screeching like it's in pain, and it grabs onto Deku like trying to like hurt him or kill him, since like it doesn't have that much longer left, and it begins like squeezing Deku. And as the Nomu was squeezing Deku, Deku's like screeching in pain, but he would be pushing his flames harder and harder and harder, making the flames hotter as eventually they would get darker blue, and eventually they would literally just start getting darker and darker and darker until it turns into a pitch black flame where the Nomu would just be incinerated. Like there is nothing left. That regeneration ability that the Nomu has wasn't doing anything. There was nothing left of it, mind you. And Izuku would then like just sit there as he falls onto one knee and like coughs out some blood, seeing as like the Nomu was like, literally crushing him, you know what I mean? Like Gohan style. You know what you guys remember what Cell did to Gohan in the Cell games? Literally that, or even what Toppo did to Goku in the Tournament of Power, where he like squeezed him for the exhibition, right? That's exactly what was happening. Then Izuku would turn towards the direction of Shigaraki, who would be terrified. Mind you, Deku just straight up took out the Nomu, but it would be at this moment that as Izuku was about to go in and like just like absolutely full send it, All Might would arrive, and he would then end up basically telling Izuku thank you for helping him, as he would appear in front of Shigaraki, and then he would tell him he's coming with them, as Shigaraki would then almost be grabbed by All Might. But that's suddenly when Kurogiri would tell teleport Shigaraki out of there as well as himself, and Izuku would just be like, well, no, actually I think Izuku would get mad, honestly. He would turn to All Might and say, what are you doing? You're so fast and you let him get away? And All Might would look at him and say, it's okay, Izuku, right now we have to worry about your students. And Deku would just look at All Might angrily like, no, you let him get away. As he would just fly off with his wings and rush over towards the direction of more villains, as shooting flames at them and like burning them, giving them like straight 3rd, 4th degree burns, right? Since he's mad, he's letting off some steam. And after helping save everybody else who was left, Izuku would then be told by by UA, or not told by UA, but told by Endeavor when he's home that he's not going to be going to class for about a week, considering everything that happened at that event. As Endeavor would go on to ask Deku what happened, if what he heard was really true, if he took out some crazy monster. And Deku would look at him and say, yeah, I did. What about it? As Endeavor would look at Izuku and say, I didn't think you had it in you, kid. Get stronger. Maybe I'll train you. As it'd be in this moment that Izuku, like after hearing that, would glare at Endeavor, but deep down, he was so happy at hearing that notion. And for the following week, Izuku would train even harder than he had ever done before, realizing one thing during that week: he had no injuries. Like, for some reason, it was like his flames had healed him. And Izuku barely took note of that, like in that moment after when Endeavor said that. He's like, all right, well, first I have to heal, and then I can, until he realized, like, my ribs are no longer cracked. My jaw is no longer dislocated. The blood that I like was spitting out no longer hurts. Like, what happened? And Izuku starts realizing, like, I have healing flames just like Marco, right? And the reason that I'm doing that is because I wasn't thinking of actually giving Izuku healing flames, but somebody commented in the comments that Izuku's like fighting style was so similar to Marco from One Piece, and I barely ended up realizing that at the end. Like, Deku has wings and flames that don't burn, so it would be a literal perfect power up to give Deku that ability. So yeah, we're just gonna roll with it. And over the course of the week, Izuku would get actually really decent at using that like healing quirk flame ability, as eventually we would get to the UA Sports Festival, right? And it would be here that we would get events like the race, which obviously, like, with Izuku having an ability like creating wings that can help him literally fly, he is of course going to be in the top 3. I don't think that I want Izuku to win this, just because, like, yes, he's fast, but I don't want him to just absolutely destroy Todoroki and everything. I think that what I want to happen is, like, as everything was starting, Izuku was doing so good, and Bakugo started catching up, and Todoroki was like a bit behind them both, and Deku and Bakugo started like fighting in the air at the last second, like trying to like one up the other. But in the midst of that, Todoroki would pass the both of them and would actually end up getting the first place headband, meaning that during the cavalry battle, when Deku would assemble his team, he would not have the same problem that he would get in the original of having the 1 million point headband. Not only that, but this time around, Deku's team is actually going to be slightly different. This time around, Deku's going to be having Jiro with him. He's also going to be having not Meihatsume for sure. I think Tokiyami is definitely one that he could definitely go after, and then he could also maybe get with the, I don't even know honestly, but Deku, like this like little cavalry section doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, like whether he wins or doesn't. Let's just say that he wins, but I am gonna leave you guys with this. Obviously, Deku in the midst of the cavalry battle would try to go after Todoroki, but midway through, I think that what I want to happen is like Deku's like trying to go after the 1 million point headband, like trying to like defeat his brother, but realizing that there's probably going to be 1v1 battles, he thinks, why would I defeat him here if I could humiliate him publicly? So right as he was literally inches away from grabbing the headband, he would straight up just give it back. Like, he had grabbed the headband and then he would just toss it back at Todoroki saying, this is too easy of a victory. This doesn't feel earned. As Todoroki would just look at him like stunned, like, what? And then Izuku would just go after other people, like getting different headbands, taking out other opponents that definitely would have given him problems. One of them actually being the group that Shinso was in. Deku was not playing no games. He wasn't hearing anything that anyone was saying, and he just straight shot flames at Shinso's team, meaning that they all just got like knocked off their knocked off the cavalry thing and Shinso's team was eliminated because of that, he would grab their headband, and eventually Izuku would move on, having second place because he ended up taking that many headbands, you know? And eventually after this would happen, we would get Deku going up against some fodder kid from class 1B that has the ability to, like, I don't know, like solidify air, I guess. Like that's the guy who he's gonna be going up against. And Izuku's just like, he's like not having it. So as soon as the battle would start, I definitely want to have like a little bit of a cool scene happen where Deku, picture it like this. I want to set everything up perfectly in your guys' minds. So Deku at this moment would be like in the waiting room, right? And he's just like, okay, like everything's going good so far. I just need to make it ahead and defeat Todoroki and show father that I'm more worthy of training, right? And Deku in this moment is just like psyching himself up. I can definitely see a scene playing out where Todoroki like thanks Deku for like him giving him the headband back and not like eliminating him, and Deku would say sure, like he's acting just really nice to him. Like I would definitely like to have a scene like that in the video. And then after that, like he makes his way outside, and Deku, like when he's in the middle of the first battle of the 1v1 battles, the opponent that he would actually end up facing up against would look at Deku and he would say, let's have a good match. And Deku is like kind of zoned out, just thinking about how badly he's gonna destroy Todoroki. So as soon as the proctor would say Hajime, aka Midnight, the dude with the ability to solidify air would create like an air prison around Izuku, and Izuku would look, realize what's going on, and immediately with white flames he would just shatter the air as he would walk, and like there would be like a little bit of smoke like covering everything, and white flames would just be bursting everywhere as Izuku would shoot like a hand of white flames, not like a massive one but like a skinny one that would grab the neck of the kid as he would like throw him up into the air. And Izuku, like not even like he's not even doing anything, a literal baseball bat made out of flames would appear, and the flames would actually be red this time. It would appear and smack the kid into the grass as the kid would go flying into it, and Izuku would just walk off saying nothing. As Endeavor watching this from the stands would be like, I've never been able to do anything like that. Like where did he learn that? You know what I mean? Like his fire control is way beyond even mine. You know what I mean? And so after this, we would then get Izuku going up against his next opponent, which is actually going to be Todoroki. Or no. I don't want him to go up against Todoroki first. I want him to go up against yeah, this time around he doesn't go up against Shinso. Let's say that he goes up against Kirishima, right? Let's say that he goes up against Kirishima and Bakugo goes up against Todoroki. Now, in the original, I think that Bakugo definitely would have given Todoroki a run for his money if Todoroki had been like trying fully. But since Todoroki still is like against using his flames, but this time he is going to be trying, it would be a high difficulty battle for Todoroki. But ultimately, I can definitely see Todoroki winning just because he wants to fight his brother in the finals and maybe get it out of both of their systems, you know? And so Todoroki would win that battle, and Izuku would easily destroy Kirishima. I mean, come on now. Kirishima is a close range fighter. Deku has flames. He can fight him from long range. He can literally fly into the sky and just push him off with flames, and Todoroki won't be able to do a thing about it. And honestly, I think that's what Deku's gonna do, because he kind of likes Kirishima in this version. Like, Kirishima's never bothered him. He's actually like made him laugh a couple of times, and he's kind of cool in his opinion. So instead of Izuku like being mean, as soon as the match would begin, Izuku would create a massive just like wall of flames, and the flames would just begin getting closer and closer to Kirishima as Kirishima would run right through them, and Izuku would realize like, hey yo, like these flames are not even burning him. So he would take up to the sky and shoot like red flames at Kirishima. Kirishima would like be tanking them, and Deku would just be like, don't make me do this, as he shoots more and more and more and more flames, eventually turning them blue and sending Kirishima flying off of the stadium thing as he would lose. And eventually we would get Deku versus Todoroki. It would be here that like eventually everything would finally culminate. Endeavor's there in the stands watching both of his boys, like thinking to himself like, whoever wins is the one that I'm gonna train up. And as this is all happening, Deku would like make his way towards the stage. He's acting like super nice, and Deku's just thinking to himself like, I'm going to obliterate Todoroki. Like I'm literally gonna decimate him. And Todoroki would just be looking at his brother, just saying, I guess this is, what would Todoroki even do? Like at this moment, like his character development is kind of whack. Like would he even say anything? He would just look at his brother and say, he would just look at his brother Deku and be like, let's settle this here. And Izuku would look at Todoroki and say, I plan to, as immediately, Hajime. And eventually Izuku would rush it the direction of Todoroki, as Todoroki shoots a giant pillar of ice at him, the same one that he would have shot at the tape boy. And Deku would instantly melt it, just being like, you kidding me? Slamming his foot on the ground, melting it instantly. As Todoroki would realize, like, yo, I might need my flames. But it'd be in this moment that Izuku would get closer and closer and closer, and Todoroki would just try to like create separation between the both of them using his ice, but Deku would just literally turn it into water. Like there was just a bunch of puddles covering the floor that they were on, and Izuku would just smirk as he's getting closer and closer and closer. And eventually Todoroki would shoot flames at Izuku, but Izuku would do something that like Todoroki had never even like thought that would even happen. Like he had never even fathomed this even being a possibility. Izuku would like hold his hand out and like what he would like catch the flames, and in this moment his palms would begin to go like a weird like greenish color as he would begin to actually end up absorbing the flames into himself, and he would begin getting more and more powerful. Todoroki watching this would be like, what the? And eventually Izuku would just open his mouth, shooting a gigantic blast of flames at Todoroki, which would actually end up like burning off half of his clothes, and like he barely dodged it, which would have like straight up left him hospitalized like for weeks at least. And Todoroki in this moment would look at him being like, are you trying to kill me? And Deku would say, no, but I am trying to get close to it, as he would rush back in towards Todoroki, and Todoroki would shoot ice, like just actually going all out at this moment, like trying his best to defeat Deku, but he's just like, Deku is just hard negating him. Like everything he's doing, Deku's hard countering him. And even in the moments where Todoroki is like trying to like use flames, he's not as good of a flame user as Deku. And Deku's just like he's just running circles against Todoroki, honestly. Eventually it would all culminate in Deku shooting a gigantic like flame attack, like ball of just like energy at Todoroki, and it would just completely shoot him off of the stadium, leaving him indented in the stadium walls. Like Todoroki would get shot out flying and crash onto like the stadium like concrete, and like he would literally be embedded into it, as Todoroki would then fall onto the ground unconscious, and Endeavor, watching all this, would simply walk away just being like, as it would be in this moment that Deku would then be given his first place medal. And right after this would happen, like literally right after, we would just get like a little bit of a cut in time to what happens after everything, where Endeavor just walks over towards Izuku, congratulates him, and then tells him that he's going to be putting in a request to have him train under him over the course of the next week. As Izuku would just be like, sounds good, and he would just like walk off, but like inside he was so happy. But it'd be in this moment that he would think to himself like, was it worth it? Like I did hurt Todoroki pretty bad. Like I hate him, but I don't want to kill him, you know? And Todoroki's in pretty bad shape, but Izuku's just thinking like, nah, he's had a good life to this point. Like a little pain never hurt anyone, right? Thinking like, maybe him getting beat this bad will make him stronger too. Just like having him as a goalpost to reach made me stronger. And Izuku would just like think about it like that in his head, just like kind of trying to make it make sense in his head where he doesn't feel that bad about it. But eventually we would get the day where Izuku has to pick his hero name, and let's just say that that Izuku picks the hero name, I don't know, I couldn't be bothered to think. Comment something down below in the comments and I'll pick the one that I comment and I'm like, this is fire, that's the name that we're gonna be going with. Okay, with that said, yeah, keep going. Anyways, right after this happens, we would eventually get the day where Izuku would show up at Endeavor's hero agency, and when he would walk in, he would be greeted by one of Endeavor's like agency members, which would be Burning or Flame or something like, I forgot her name, but it's just this girl with green like hair, and she has like a flame quirk as well. Izuku would walk in, and it'd be in this moment that Endeavor would look at Deku and say like, about time you got here, as he would tell him that they can begin their training. And just immediately off the bat, like Deku was not like sitting there like being like, I hate you, old man. Like no, immediately they just went into hero patrol, and Izuku was there with Endeavor watching how he handled like hero patrolling and stuff like that, how he used his flames. and they would just be out there from like the moment that Izuku got there to the moment he passes out, using their abilities to actually just save tons of people. And since this time Todoroki doesn't end up going with Endeavor, he would end up going with somebody else. Like let's say Edgeshot would want him to go to his agency, right? So Todoroki goes with Edgeshot, and Izuku would end up being with Endeavor. Eventually, at the end of everything, Endeavor would ask Izuku how he got so strong, and he would ask him if he's ready to tell him now. And Izuku would say that he trained by himself. The whole time that he was focusing on training Todoroki, Izuku would say he should have been focusing on him. He actually wanted to train. He actually wants to become the #1 hero. And Endeavor, hearing this, would say, yeah, well, I'm done wasting my time with him. We can begin training. We're now going to begin training and make sure that you become the #1 hero. And Izuku, after hearing Endeavor say that, it's like everything he ever wanted to hear was finally completed in that moment. And Izuku would just like continue training with Endeavor. Eventually, what would end up going down is we would get a call from Hosu, as I still definitely believe that Shigaraki would still end up trying to recruit Stain. Shigaraki still would end up obviously failing at it, of course. And then after all that would happen, the Nomus would still go crazy. And Endeavor and Izuku this time around, not Endeavor and Todoroki, but Endeavor and Izuku would be in Hosu City, where Endeavor would actually trust Izuku to go off on his own and handle some of the Nomus himself. So Izuku would do just that, taking a Nomu out as Endeavor was handling another one, and then one that could fly would actually begin like flying away from Deku. So he immediately would fly right after it, and right as he was about to actually take it out, he would hear a scream, which would be Ida, as he had just gotten stabbed in the back by Stain. As Izuku would immediately rush in there, and like that would have literally have just paralyzed Ida. Like I don't think you guys understand, like he literally just got paralyzed because he stabbed him in his spine, like his spinal cord, right? And so Izuku would just look at Ida and he can't move. It's not Stain's quirk, he's just paralyzed. And he's like bleeding a bit from his mouth. Izuku in this moment would look at Stain and ask him what he's done, as he would then shoot flames at the body of Ida, and Stain would say, "That's a bit cruel, don't you think? Cremating him on the spot while he was awake?" And Izuku would say, "That's not what I did." As Ida in this moment would feel himself like begin to get mobility back in his legs and stuff. And Ida would literally stand up, as Stain would look at Izuku in such confusion. And then Izuku would say, "Night, night," as he would shoot a flaming, like he would just like hold his hand out and just boom, like a gigantic amount of flames would shoot at him. And mind you, they're in an alleyway, so even if Stain tried to like jump from wall to wall to wall to wall to like evade it, he would not be fast enough to do that. Like Stain is superhuman levels of speed, but he's not fast enough to avoid point blank flames. And so Stain gets absolutely charred. And then like Stain just kind of like looks at Deku, like he gets back up and he's like, "How dare you, like no one's gonna kill me but All Might." And it'd be in this moment that he would actually freak the life out of Deku, right? Because he's like, "Yo, what? Like I literally burned this dude, like what do I have to do, kill him?" And it'd be in this moment that like Stain would rush in at Deku, and Deku would have to like just jump back as Stain would stab him. And Izuku would actually in this moment like freak out, because he's like, "No, I just got stabbed." But what's it called? As he got stabbed, like Stain got even more burnt because he would shoot flames out, but at that moment Stain didn't care because he already had gotten burned, right? So Stain would be about to like lick the blade, but it would be in this moment that Ida would send like a gigantic reciprocal burst kick to Stain right in the ribs, sending him crashing into the wall, as the blade that he would have used to actually like get the blood from Deku would have went flying to the floor. And then Deku would look at Stain as he would be knocked out cold, because mind you, he got hit in the head by a reciprocal burst kick. Like nobody is just going to be getting up after that, right? And yeah, that's exactly what ends up happening. Followed by this, Ida like looks at Deku and would thank him for that. And then Deku would say, "Yeah, sure, clean everything up here. I got a Nomu I gotta take care of." As he would turn around, run, and then just like flaming wings would come off from his back, as Ida would look at Deku and think his quirk is so cool, and Deku would just fly off towards the direction of where he remembers the Nomu. In this moment, the Nomu was about to like actually like kill like this mother and her children, but Izuku would just like he throws like a trident of flame right at the head of the Nomu. It would turn back screeching at Deku, but he would land on it, grab the head of the Nomu, and like black flames would just like shoot out of the Nomu's like cranium as he would just completely burn him, just like Endeavor would do in the Hosu City incident when he would have ended up killing one of the Nomus, and the Nomu would just fall down onto the ground as Izuku would ask like the lady and her kids, he's like, "Are you guys okay?" And like the lady would be like, "You're a hero," and Deku would say, "No, I'm just doing my job." As yeah, right after that would end up going down, like that's basically all that happens. The Hosu City incident would actually go by smoothly, and if not for the fact that Endeavor was actually there at Hosu, I'm not gonna lie, like normally without Deku there, Stain kills Ida 100% of the time. Like it's not even up for debate. Without Deku's presence being there, Ida just dies, bro. Like I ain't gonna lie to y'all. But yeah, right after all of that stuff ends up happening, we then jump back into the classroom where everybody would sort of be told about the forest training camp arc as well as their final exams. And the final exams is like kind of an interesting thing to talk about because it's not like there is actually any stakes in this section of the story, so we're going to be skipping that. Just know Deku does pass. This time around, however, he doesn't actually get paired up against All Might, considering that Deku doesn't have the problems that he had with Bakugo. Instead, Deku would actually end up being paired up with Todoroki because he has problems working with him. And not only that, I think it'd be a lot cooler considering that him and Todoroki both are heavily reliant on their quirks. And this is a moment where I think we could have a little bit of character development for Deku. Since here, Deku and Todoroki would try to like do their best to keep up with Aizawa, but considering the fact that both of them without their quirks are absolutely going to get bodied by Aizawa, I'm going to say that Aizawa would actually end up beating the both of them. And so Izuku has to go on the remedial training course in the forest exam. Looks like having a powerful quirk doesn't always come in handy, especially not when you're against somebody up against somebody like Aizawa. And even though Deku is good at hand-to-hand combat, he's not on Aizawa's level. He doesn't have any weapons. He absolutely got fodderized. And yeah, right after this would happen, we would end up getting the forest training camp arc, where here everything goes the same as it does in canon. I literally mean everything. Like Class 1B arrives, Deku would end up like learning about Koda, and all of those things would end up going down just like they do in canon, with Deku realizing like, oh dang, like Koda lost his parents. Eventually on the I think it was like the 3rd or 4th day of the training camp exercise camp or whatever, Deku would have actually ended up noticing Koda walking off. And it would be here that Deku would like just follow the kid, being like, I want to talk to him. Like I may not relate to him all the way because I have my parents, but I sort of get what he's going through. Like I basically grew up without a dad, and my mom went to a psychiatric ward, so I guess if anyone can talk to this kid, it'd probably be me. So Deku would like chase after Koda, like slowly, obviously, like he's not running after him. He's just like walking behind him, and he would then find Koda like just straight up crying. Like he was just like weeping, right? And Deku would just be hearing things as Koda just like throws a rock into off the mountainside, and Deku was just like there listening to what Koda was like thinking about and crying, right? But it would be when suddenly Deku would notice like a masked caped figure coming from the distance, and Deku turning towards that direction would realize that it's Muscular. As it'd be in this moment that Izuku would jump in the way and like reveal himself that he was there too, as Muscular would have been like, huh, looks like I got some easy pickings. But Deku in this moment, like right before Muscular was about to crush him with his hand, because mind you, Koda's like a little kid, and usually in anime when kids get scared, they sort of just stand still like deers in headlights. So he was about to get like completely killed by one of Muscular's punches, but Deku would jump in the way, shooting flames at the direction of Muscular, sending him flying back, as he would grab onto Koda and immediately just like activate his wings, as he's like, I gotta take you to safety before I can destroy this guy. But it'd be in this moment that Muscular was having none of it, bro. Like he literally jumped off of there. He's like, where are you going, kid? Grabbing onto the leg of Izuku just barely, as Deku would be flying up in the sky, grabbing Koda, mind you, and Muscular would just be looking at him as his muscles begin like expanding more and more and more. And he would say, we're not done here. Let go, Deku would say, as Muscular would say, "No way I'm gonna let go of you," and he would actually end up beginning to crush Deku's leg. So it would be in this moment that Deku would have no other choice but to fly up into the sky as fast as he possibly can, because mind you, his leg is literally getting crushed as we speak. So Deku would be gritting his teeth as he's holding on to Koda and low-key beginning to slip on his grip with him, because he can't exactly hold him, deal with the pain, and fly all at the same time. So what Izuku would do is begin flying up higher and higher and higher and higher until eventually Deku would throw Koda as far as he possibly can, leaving Koda to straight free fall from the sky as he's waving his arms out and flailing around going, "Why?" As in the span of the next couple of seconds, here's what Deku would do. His wings grow double in size as he flaps his wings up into the air, shooting up as high as he possibly can, as in an instant, Deku would say, "Incineration Blaze!" as he would let out all of the flames that he has stored up, just like Endeavor would have done so against the Nomu in, I believe it was season 4 or 5. But once Deku would do that, Muscular would be completely unconscious, as not only would he have been charred, but now Muscular is free falling from hundreds and hundreds of feet from the sky, as Deku now would have to fly in as fast as he possibly can to catch Koda, as using his flames that don't burn anything, he would create an arm that it would extend to Koda, grabbing him at the last possible second before Koda, in tears, would end up holding onto Deku's leg and thanking him, saying that he thought he let him die. But Deku would say, is he kidding? He'd never let him do that. As from here, he would fly him over towards where Aizawa is, and hearing an explosion off in the distance, Izuku doesn't even think twice about it. He immediately rushes off towards that direction. But on his way there, Deku would actually end up hearing a little bit of devastation going on the side of him, as Deku would fly off towards that direction, realizing that it was Tokiyami and Dupli Arms there, who were both in some crazy situation where Tokiyami was losing control of his quirk. Deku, realizing what was going on, would immediately shoot a blaze of flames towards the direction of Tokiyami, leading Tokiyami to finally be able to turn off his bird thing form. And so Deku would ask them what's going on, as they would both end up informing Deku that in the midst of trying to defeat a couple of villains that ran up on them, Tokiyami ended up losing control of his quirk. And Deku would look at him and say, "Look, I understand, but you guys gotta come with me now. There's something that's going on in the distance." As Tokiyami and Dupli Arms would say they know, and they would all rush towards that direction, as in this moment they would realize that it's none other than Bakugo and Todoroki there, who are facing off against a villain called Moonfish. Once Deku would arrive, Deku would lock eyes with Todoroki, and Todoroki, seeing Deku, would hold out his arm that shoots flames, as he would basically just destroy Moonfish with one fell swoop of his flames, because Todoroki hasn't exactly been the biggest fan of Deku since what happened at the sports festival. And though I didn't really mention it during the section in which they were forced to work together, they just straight up didn't talk to each other. And Todoroki is just done trying to be Mr. Nice Guy to Izuku. He's not having it. He tried his best. He tried to get Deku to maybe be friends with him. He tried something, but Deku didn't care, so now Todoroki doesn't either. And it's not exactly panning out too well for Deku now, because as you can see, Todoroki not liking him back is definitely going to make things a little bit harder, but you'll see what I mean in a bit. Anyways though, once this would happen, the group would just correlate together, as so they would continue going forward with all this going on, right? Now in the original, one thing that actually ends up taking place is that Tokiyami and Bakugo would actually end up being taken by Mr. Compress, right? Mr. Compressor. But with this timeline, specifically, the person that I actually want to have become being one of the people that is taken is not going to be Tokiyami, but rather Todoroki. And you're going to see why right now. But what pretty much ends up going down here is that they end up finally getting towards where the girls are at, and so they would find Tsuyu and Uraraka there facing off against Toya. Once they would get there, Toya would be forced to run away, and so the group would finally end up realizing that Bakugo and Todoroki are missing. Deku, seeing Mr. Compressor in the air, would shoot off towards him at full speed, trying to stop him from taking Bakugo and Todoroki, trying to make amends for what happened back there, feeling sorry as the emotions would finally start setting in that Todoroki, now Deku knows what Todoroki felt like. That's the way that Deku acted towards him their whole life, and Deku does not like it at all, and he wants to make amends with his brother. He wants to say he's sorry, and he really wants to put things right, but right now he has to focus on saving his brother. and so he would do so, doing his absolute best to get in close to try to save Todoroki, but it just does not work. Deku would be a split second too late, and that split second would be more than enough time for Todoroki to be taken to the villain's lair, where immediately Todoroki and Bakugo would both actually end up getting interrogated. Or actually, no, what I'm going to be saying is, in the original story, I believe it was Deku who was responsible for saving one of them, because I do believe that only one student was kidnapped. Yeah, only one student was kidnapped. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. So only one person's going to be kidnapped, and instead of Bakugo being the one who was taken, it's going to be Todoroki, which is going to be making things a little bit more complicated, but I think that everything's still ultimately going to culminate perfectly. Deku would end up grabbing Bakugo, saving him, and then realize that Todoroki, he was taken. Deku would look at Todoroki, but Todoroki wouldn't even look at him with eyes of help me. He just didn't care. And in that moment, Deku would be like, Todoroki, holding his hand out, as Todoroki straight up could have grabbed Deku's arm, but he looked at him with disgust and didn't do it, as he was taken away and Bakugo was just sitting there, slamming an explosion on the ground, as he would say, damn it, I was so weak back there. As suddenly, Deku would just look at the direction where the portal just faded, and he would let out a roar, as everybody around him would be wondering if he's okay. Deku would slowly get up and ask if there's any way that they can track him, any way that they can get him back. He needs to apologize to him, and right now, he doesn't know what these villains are going to do to him. But everybody would tell him that there is no way, until finally, Momo would end up arriving to Deku, telling him that there is a way, showing Deku the tracker and everything that was needed in order to actually find Todoroki. But this would be on the same day that the hospital stuff went down, where they would actually end up visiting the people who got injured and such, right? So what would pretty much end up going down is that instead of Deku going off with Momo, Kirishima, Ida, Uraraka, and I believe someone else, actually no, that's not true, nobody else went with them. Instead of having those guys be the ones responsible for taking Ida back, Bakugo back, Deku alone is going to be taking the tracking device from Momo and essentially going in there as a one-man squad. The heroes would end up arriving, and they would end up taking out the Nomus just like they do in the original, with even All Might and the heroes being there and handling the villains, right? However, when Deku would end up arriving, he would arrive literally like 10 seconds into the battle, as Deku's flame quirk would shoot towards the direction of Mr. Compressor, as he would ask him, where did you take him? And suddenly, Mr. Compressor, or suddenly All Might would go up to Deku and grab him, telling him that they'll find Todoroki. He's not here, he's probably at the other location. And Deku would have a sigh of relief, as suddenly, Mount Lady would end up informing All Might that he's not there. Suddenly, Deku would lose his cool, looking towards Mr. Compressor and screaming once more, where is she? Sorry, I don't know if you guys got that reference, but he would say, where is he? As Mr. Compressor would look at him and just be like, I don't know, kid, but you're not gonna find him. I can promise you that. And so Deku would be angry and would be about to shoot a flame attack at Mr. Compressor, but All Might would say, we don't do that. We're heroes, Izuku. I understand you want to see your brother, but we have to wait. When suddenly a black little like fog / mist thing would appear out of nowhere, and this would obviously be All For One, who would end up arriving with a huge smile on his face underneath his mask, obviously, slow clapping as he would say, well done, heroes. But it seems that you were too late. When it comes to Todoroki, don't worry about him. He's one of us now. And Deku, after hearing that, would be like, there's no way Todoroki would have joined the likes of you. You're garbage who kills for money. But that's when All For One would say, not quite, Izuku. As from here, he would look towards the direction of All Might, telling him that all those other heroes better get lost, because it's a one-on-one time. And Deku would say, you're right, it is, shooting a fire attack towards the direction of All Might, as he would stare at All For One and say, you're dead, before shooting a fire attack towards the direction of All For One, which All For One would easily counter using a force field quirk that he would have taken a while back. And Deku would just be sitting there watching as All For One would laugh in his face. Deku in this moment would create two flame giant arms as they would rush in towards
towards the direction of All For One, but All For One, using a wind quirk, would blast them away with a huge smile on his face, before then shooting tendrils at Izuku, which Izuku would be forced to dodge by creating wings and flying up into the air. It'd be in this moment that All For One would shoot a wind burst attack towards the direction of Deku, and Deku would be forced to fly underneath it, weaving it, flying towards the direction of All For One, who would shoot a flame attack right back at Deku. But it'd be in that moment that Deku, taking in the flames, much like a Dragon Slayer, not exactly consuming them, Deku would actually add them to his flames, as his flames would increase in size, and All For One would have a huge smile on his face, saying perfect, as he would literally just tank this attack that Deku would throw at him by using a hardening quirk, which he would have gotten. And this hardening quirk isn't going to be Kirishima's, but it's actually going to be a quirk very similar to that of Tetsu, which can resist like very, very high levels of heat, right? And now Deku would just stand there, as All For One would say, you know, that attack was quite clever, but it's not enough. As he would shoot a tendril at Deku, which would actually pierce him in the stomach, Deku, coughing out blood, would say, what the, how did you? As All For One would say, don't sweat those small details. For now, I need to tell you something. In fact, I need to offer you something. You can join me, just like your other brothers have, and we can become powerful. Only the strong will thrive in my utopia, and the weak will be left behind. What do you say, Izuku? Izuku, looking at All For One, would just be sitting there on his knees, looking defeated, as he would say, you know, I say burn in hell! As he would lift his arm up, and huge flames would come up from the ground, burning All For One, like you know, decently, nothing too crazy. And All For One would have a huge smile on his face, saying, you know, I didn't think you would be such a fool. As Deku would then be sent flying back by an air blast that All For One would shoot towards the direction of All For One, and Deku would just be sitting there on the ground wondering what in the world he needs to do now. Like, he just got absolutely embarrassed by All For One. And in this moment, All Might would end up shooting in as he begins to take care of business, and the battle that we would get in the original between All Might and All For One would take place much like many of you guys would actually end up expecting. All Might would end up defeating All For One. All For One would be taken to prison, but Izuku wouldn't get Todoroki back. Now, on the flip side, Todoroki in this current moment would have actually ended up being recruited by All For One. He really wasn't lying. Todoroki, because of everything that's been happening ever since he had a brother, his brother hating him doing his best to get on his brother's good side, and his brother ultimately just casting him aside, this made more resentment boil up in Todoroki's heart. And since there never was a moment of like, it's your quirk too, Todoroki just became bitter. Like, he was like, I'm tired of trying to become a hero, to prove people wrong, to become this #1 hero. Like, I'm tired of it. I'm gonna destroy my father, and then I'm gonna destroy my brother. And that's what Todoroki's current goals are. And not only that, but finding out that Dabi or Toya was actually part of the League of Villains, he would like wonder and question Dabi, but Dabi would end up telling him what happened before then telling him that it's not so bad becoming a villain. After all, this way they could get revenge on their dear old father. And he has more than enough evidence to dig him 6 feet under. They don't even have to kill him. This is gonna be worse. His hero reputation's gonna be burnt to a crisp. As Todoroki would smile, and then Dabi would say, oh, and our dear little brother, we can take him out after. As Todoroki would smile, and so that's exactly what would happen, but that's not it. Todoroki would also be given a quirk. Now, this quirk was actually going to be helping Todoroki when it comes to his control over half hot, half cold. And the reason that this would be is because All For One would not only just give him a quirk, but it would actually be a perfect quirk for Todoroki. Todoroki, in Endeavor's own words, basically already had a quirk that was going to be negating the effects of his fire and his ice because he has both. But what would happen if we also threw a healing quirk on top of that? Which, even if Todoroki was to take it too far, his healing factor would begin doing the process for him. Now he no longer has to worry about overdoing his flames, overdoing his ice. Todoroki can up the freeze as much as he wants. He can up the heat as much as he wants. And Deku, now was in the hospital having been punctured by, or actually no, that's not true, he has a healing quirk. He would be in the hospital though, getting checked up by Recovery Girl, as All Might would walk into the room, tell him that he knows that he understands how he's feeling, telling him that he's sorry. And Deku would just lose it, like letting everything out on All Might, telling him how he really feels, how his childhood was, how he wishes he could get Todoroki back, and how he might have just lost him to the villains because he was some stuck-up brat who wanted to get attention, when all along he had a good brother by his side who he took for granted. Deku would look down at the ground as he would say, "How do I get him back, All Might? How do I get my brother back?" And All Might would look at him before saying, "I don't know, young Midoriya, but if anybody can, it's you and your father." As Deku would look at the ground and say, "My father won't get him back. In fact, he probably went to the villain side so he could kill Endeavor." As All Might would just be like, "What? He really has that much hatred for his father?" And Deku would say, "You have no idea, do you, All Might?" And so they would end up just leaving that room as Deku would say, "Hey, All Might, thanks for the chat." As he would just walk out of there. And now for the following next couple of months, we would have arcs such as the hero license arc, such as the final exam. Such as not the final exam, but the hero license arc. After the hero license arc, we would even have an arc such as the overhaul arc, except it's not much of an arc, considering I'm not positive about this, but I'm almost sure that One For All was actually given a Miriam in this version. Honestly, I rewatched part 2, not part 1, so I don't exactly remember who got One For All, but if I did have to guess, I would probably say that I ended up giving it to Mirio. So with that said, Mirio would actually be more than enough to handle Overhaul, even when it comes to the alley situation. Plus, without Deku having One For All, there's no way he ends up going under Sir Night-Eye. I don't even think that Sir Night-Eye would accept them. And even if Mirio and Deku were to fight in the section of the story in which Mirio wants to prove to the classroom that that he is very, very powerful, I think that ultimately Mirio is just too strong for Deku. I think that Deku is just in this timeline, even though like to this point it's almost seemed like Deku's that guy, like he's gonna be number one. No, it's actually Mirio. This might as well be covering the story of Mirio, because if Mirio got One For All, it would be a completely different ballpark. Unfortunately for Mirio, his lifespan is going to be cut short because of the insane power that he has, but hey, at least he's going to be having insane power, right? Because of that, what's pretty much going to end up going down is that we would end up also not only getting arcs like Overhaul, but getting these sections of the story with Gentle Criminal and other things such as that, until eventually we would get the section of the story which would cover the My Villain Academia arc. And Todoroki being part of Shigaraki's squad and stuff like that, he would go through the Gigantomachia section. He would go through the section where he has to beat Dr. Doofenshmirtz, or more specifically Shigaraki, right? And that whole section would pretty much go down just like you guys would be expecting. I mean, it goes down just like in the original, just a little easier considering now they have another person who has ice and fire, who's very, very powerful. And during this whole time, don't think Deku's just been sitting around sleeping. Don't think he's just been doing nothing. No, Deku has been upping his flames day and night, getting stronger and stronger in any way that he possibly can. Deku literally trains from the moment he wakes up to the moment he goes to sleep. Deku has been working on different variations of flame, and he has one specific flame type that he has been working on that is so unbelievably powerful that Deku just it's gonna deal damage. Even if you have like flame resistance, it's gonna melt it. Like seriously, it's that potent. And the reason that Deku's been doing that is because he wants to get Todoroki back. So eventually it would get to the point in the story in which the war arc would go down, the first war arc to be exact, right, in which Shigaraki and the heroes would end up going into this huge battle where heroes were facing off against Nomus were facing off against not facing off against civilians, but they were killing civilians and stuff like that. And we get the whole section of Shigaraki just being a beast. In this timeline, what's pretty much going to go down is that Mirio is actually going to be the one who handles the main person of the story, which is actually going to be Shigaraki. So he's going to be the one taking Shigaraki down, and he is going to be doing so. But Deku is going to be the one who's actually going to be facing off against Todoroki and Dabi. Not just Todoroki, but Todoroki and Dabi, a 2v1. That is until his father gets there, but even Endeavor's not going to be providing too much help. The way that I can see this whole arc panning out is that most of the events that you guys would see in the war arc in terms of season 6, I believe it is, they're all pretty much going to play out just like you would expect. But once we get to the section where Deku would finally, after taking out multiple Nomus, would finally see his brother Todoroki, as he would just be sitting on an ice throne that he would have made himself. As he would look at Deku and say, "It took you 20 more minutes than I was expecting. You getting soft on me, bro?" As Deku would look at him and say, "Todoroki, look, I just needed to say I'm..." And Todoroki would shoot flames at Deku, sending him back a bit. Or no, not flames, but he would shoot ice at Deku, which would freeze Deku in place, as Todoroki would smile and say, "I can't believe you're that weak. My ice isn't even at its coldest state." But suddenly, the ice would rapidly turn to water, boiling water, as Deku would say, "You're not gonna let me talk, are you?" And Todoroki would say, "What do you think, Deku?" As from here, Deku would say, "Well, I have no choice then." As he would go on to just look at Todoroki and say, "I don't want to do this." But Todoroki would say, "I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news, but if memory serves, the last time I didn't either." As he would shoot a fire attack straight towards the direction of Deku, but Deku would shoot a fire attack right back as he'd be countering it perfectly, when suddenly blue flames from the right side of Deku would shoot at Deku, sending him flying to the ground. And Deku would look up to see Dabi standing there. As Deku would say, "Who the heck is this guy?" With Todoroki saying, "That's our brother Toya. Remember him?" As Deku would say, "Toya's alive?" And Dabi would say, "Alive and kicking," as he would shoot another fire attack towards the direction of Deku, but Deku would hold his hand out, moving it in a weird direction, as the flames would bend to his will, and they would be sent flying back right towards the direction of Dabi, as a pillar of ice would shoot up in front of him so high up into the sky that it almost looks like it never ends, but it does. As Deku would say, "Todoroki, when did you..." And suddenly a huge beam of ice lances would come shooting towards the direction of Deku, with Deku shooting fire birds at the direction as they would melt them. Deku from here would look at Todoroki and tell him that he just wants to talk, but Todoroki would say it's too late for that, shooting a fire attack at Deku, as Deku would try to make the flames work in his favor, but Todoroki would say, "What's wrong? You having some problems molding my flames to your will? Good, because I infused them with my ice." As Deku would have a shocked expression, being like, "What?" And Todoroki would say, "You're not the only one with cold flames," as these flames would end up touching Deku, and it would actually give him frostbite on the sections that it touched him on. Deku from here would shoot some healing flames on it, healing it immediately, as Todoroki would say, "I forgot about that. You can heal too. Let's see whose healing factor's better." As he would look at Deku and say, "I'm not here to play games. How about we finish this in one full-fledged attack?" But Deku would say, "I'm not doing that," creating two flames behind him as he shoots towards Todoroki. And Todoroki says, "Anything you can do, I can do better." And he would create wings, but they wouldn't be like just flame wings, but they would dang near look like dragon wings that are double the size. As he shoots off towards the direction of Deku, both of his arms would be covered in ice as they would be spiky, and Deku would cover his fists in flames, as his foot would also be covered in flames. And as Deku was going in for the punch, he would move mid-air, spinning, landing what looks like a fire dragon talon, as he would hit Todoroki square in the face, sending him flying back. But Todoroki would have grabbed Deku by the arm, freezing it, causing the arm to low-key get frostbite, as Deku would heal it, shooting back towards the direction of Todoroki, who's also healed, as they're both going at it, blow after blow after blow, fire, ice, fire versus fire, anything you can think of, they're going at it. Dabi suddenly jumps into the fray once again, shooting a flame attack towards Deku, which Deku would mold to his will, and Todoroki would smile, as from here he would land an attack, seeing as the fact that Dabi was able to distract him. But it'd be in this moment that Endeavor would finally arrive on the scene, and seeing Dabi again for the first time would be like, "How are you?" Dabi would go on a monologue with Endeavor. Endeavor and Dabi would go at it. Endeavor doesn't even want to fight his son, but he knows that he has to distract them for Deku to take Todoroki back, bring him back to the light. Deku's going at it. Todoroki and them, they're really shooting attacks at each other. But ultimately, it would culminate in the both of them realizing that if they keep this up, they're both just going to stalemate each other, or eventually run out of energy to continue this fight. So Todoroki would say, I know you can see it too, Deku. Neither of us is gonna beat the other. We need to go all out. One of us is gonna die here." But Deku would say, "Not on my watch," As from here, Deku would begin charging up a gigantic attack, as Todoroki would say, phosphorus, as he would mix his flames and his eyes, creating a gigantic attack, which he would shoot towards the direction of Deku. And Deku, from his mouth, he would open it as wide as he possibly can, as he would say, Golden Phoenix roar, shooting a gigantic burst of golden flames towards the direction of Todoroki, who seeing them would be like, what the? And suddenly Todoroki's attack would hit towards the direction of the flames, but these golden flames would be so hot. Think Amaterasu from Naruto, but like more, as they would consume the attack of Todoroki. And last second, right as they were about to completely destroy Todoroki, Deku would would bend his arm up as the flames would shoot up into the sky, clearing it entirely, causing a beautiful scene to appear, as Deku would fall onto one of his knees and say, I don't want to fight you, Todoroki. I'm sorry. Falling onto the ground, as Todoroki would catch Izuku and ask him why he didn't finish him. And Deku would say, because everybody deserves a second chance. Even he does, right? And Todoroki, looking at Deku, would just stay silent for a moment before saying, fine. As he would suddenly turn towards Dabi, freeze him in place, and then the war arc would instantly be over. Shigaraki, Dabi, Todoroki, and all the threats of the My Hero Academia story have now been completely taken care of, meaning now Deku and Todoroki could finally focus on their newly found relationship, and they're able to grow as siblings, eventually going on to open their own hero agency, which would be the two Flame Brothers, is what they're going to be calling their agency or something like that. You know, just something like that you would think like is just like very like common, something just like very stereotypical, right? They go on to do that, and that's it. Like, that's literally just where the what if ends. I hadn't done this video in such a long time because I just didn't know where to end this series off on. I didn't know what to do, but I finally ended up having a couple of ideas for the story, and I'm honestly so proud of how this story came out. Let me know what you guys thought about the story down below in the comments. Let me know what you guys would have changed in my story, if you guys would change anything, and also let me know what other videos I should drop down below soon in the comments. So with all that out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, God bless you. It has been your boy Xehther, and I am out. Peace.